Welcome back. In the previous video we covered Part 2 of the NAP Handbook, Available Coverage. In this one we'll be covering Part 3, Section 1, Producer Eligibility. In the last video we learned about the coverage options, the eligibility of a cause of loss, the eligibility of specific crops, when that coverage applies, and the amount of assistance a producer receives from the coverage. In this video we're going to look past what's covered and dive into who can obtain the coverage. We get started with paragraph 100. So, who's covered? Paragraph 100 defines a producer as an owner, operator, landlord, tenant, or sharecropper who shares in the risk of producing a crop and who has the right to share in the marketing of that crop. By this definition, not all landlords will be considered a producer. The only way a landlord or anyone is considered a producer is if they have some management over the crop itself, including how it is grown and marketed. Also, not all growers would necessarily be considered an eligible producer. If the producer is growing the crop under contract, that producer might not actually have a risk in the crop or a share in the marketing of it. In order to determine if a person can in fact be considered a producer, we have to look at paragraph 100b. According to this paragraph, the COC must be able to determine who is in control of the land and is entitled to a share of the crop. Evidence may include a lease, but it can also include the 578 producer print from CARS. A word of caution though, if you have any doubt about the validity of a claim to ownership of a crop, it is best to speak with the landowner and obtain a copy of the lease. For contract growers, paragraph 100D describes how a contract should be evaluated to ensure that the grower has risk in the crop as well as control over it, and how it is produced and marketed. Claims of ownership and control of a crop are subject to spot checks according to this paragraph. In paragraph 101, we're introduced to another new term, unit. Unit is defined as the interest of the producer in the administrative county on the basis of unique relationship of the owner to one or more operators. Units exist to show separate and distinct ownership relationships in NAP. Producers who own or cash rent land and do not share in the production of their crops with anyone else will have only one unit. Producers who share in the production of a crop with others can have multiple units. There are two unit types, OP for operator and OW for owner. Most producers will have an OP unit type, meaning they are the owner-operator. Landlords with share interest in a crop would have a unit type of OW, while the other farmer growing the crop would have an OP unit. There are a few other types of relationships and considerations, such as being an OT or an other tenant on a farm, but for the most part, NAP units are typically OP. Each unit is automatically assigned a unit number in the NAP software. You can think of this as a policy number. In paragraph 2, you'll notice that AGI rules do apply to the NAP program. Also, payment limitations apply to the program, limiting the maximum payment per payment entity to $125,000. This limitation is not crop specific. In other words, a producer cannot receive $125,000 for a loss on one crop and then be eligible for payment on another crop in the same crop year. Please note it is very important to follow 5PL and determine the correct payment limitations of an entity. Certain entities will have only a single payment limitation regardless of the number of members, for example an LLC. Other entities, such as general partnerships, can have more than one payment limitation. Premium calculations are also based on the number of payment limitations in an entity, so it is important that you know the total number of payment limitations when discussing coverage options with the producer, as they can dramatically impact the total calculated premium. We'll cover this in greater depth when we get to the premium calculations. As with most FSA programs currently, sequestration reductions will apply to any payments we issue. Sequestration will automatically be deducted from NAP payments. These rates vary from year to year, and the table below is updated periodically to list the annual sequestration rates. You'll notice that 2017 and 2018 are not updated in this version. They are updated periodically. Conservation compliance rules also apply to NAP. All NAP participants must certify to conservation compliance using the AD 1026. FCIC stands for Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. According to this paragraph, any crop insurance participant who is found to have committed crop insurance fraud will be temporarily disqualified from participation in NAP. The period of disqualification for NAP will last no longer than 2 years. This is a fairly rare occurrence, but it's good to be aware of where the rules are found and how they're applied. The next paragraph we cover CSAs, or Community Supported Agriculture. For the purpose of NAP, there are 2 types of CSAs: subscription-based or shareholder-based. Subscription-based means a farmer-driven operation where the farmer owns or leases the farm, organizes the CSA, produces the farm products, and recruits the customers, members, or subscribers. Shareholder community-supported CSAs mean consumer-driven operations where the consumer organizes the CSA, owns or leases the farm, and hires a farmer to produce the farm products. You'll find that most CSAs are probably subscription-based and thus eligible for NAP. An example of a ineligible CSA would be if your local town or maybe like a condo association decides we want to have a community garden that is managed by a farmer that we hire so that we can have fresh produce. In that instance, the operation would not be eligible for coverage under NAP. It's only farmer-led, farmer-driven CSAs that are eligible. And that's it for Part 3, Section 1, Producer Eligibility. We discussed who is considered an eligible producer, how units are determined, AGI and payment limitations, as well as sequestration. We also covered conservation compliance, FCIC fraud, and the eligibility of CSAs. In the next video, we're going to talk more about the specific crops that are covered under NAP.